Bonus Module 9, Interpretation and Signs. This module is purely food for thought, though highly important food for thought. I touched on interpretation earlier, initially uncertain as to how to explain it. However, I have given it much thought, and this is what I have come up with. The intuitive mind doesn't make things easy for us. Learning to interpret what we are actually feeling and seeing is the most challenging aspect of intuitive development and requires patience and experience. Some things might seem fairly obvious, but even then we can trip up. I myself have misinterpreted intuitive messages, only recognizing that fact in hindsight. Simple examples include the grandfather I connected with who had a cream cake in one hand and a carrot in the other. Rather than simply explaining what I was seeing, I confidently informed the customer that she was on a diet, which she swiftly refuted. "Oh," I said, "but he showed me a cream cake and a carrot." She laughed and explained that when the girls at work had a cake, she would always have a carrot. Not a life-changing message, but it goes to prove how easy it can be to misinterpret. On another occasion, I told my male customer that I could see him working with a younger female with long blonde hair ahead and that they develop a romantic relationship, because the affection between the two of them appeared obvious. He looked rightfully doubtful because he was about to marry somebody who did not fit that description. Now, this man was a well-known public figure who sometimes featured in the press. It was only when I read a story about him beginning a new project with his daughter that I understood what I'd actually been seeing, because she had very long blonde hair. And also, their relationship was obviously a close one. I doubt that it ever clicked with him, and he probably dismissed that prediction as a definite miss. I have learned, when in doubt, to simply explain what I am seeing and feeling, and maybe even offer more than one potential interpretation. The initial need to be right, to be validated as a reader, can give way to a more relaxed, considered approach with experience. In terms of advice about how to interpret, I can only offer this. Pay close attention to the way in which you feel. It won't always help, but it often does. It depends upon what you are tuning into and what you are trying to achieve. When holding a pebble or hugging a tree, you are merely going to observe and be aware without any pressure to reach a conclusion. If you are consciously tuning into a situation that is likely to be ongoing, making notes is very helpful because you'll be able to piece things together as the process unfolds. Something that makes no sense at this point might come to make sense when additional information is gained. When attempting to produce information on behalf of someone else, interpretation will be necessary. Some readers work with symbols that mean something to them personally, but you would probably need to see those symbols several times before you could work out what they actually mean to you. However, this course is not about working as a professional psychic reader or medium. I'm going to cover that separately in a book. So, as I keep repeating, the important thing to remember is to focus on how a person or situation causes you to feel, distinguishing between our judgment and knee-jerk emotions and actual intuitive prompting. They do feel different. There is something else I would like to add with regard to intuitive feeling, and I will use a simple analogy. Just say that I receive an image on the screen of my mind without any kind of accompanying sense. The image could be of a man with an axe. I could interpret that in more than one way, such as the man might be going to chop wood to make a nice cosy fire, or he might be an axe murderer. The lack of sense means that we don't have enough information to be able to accurately interpret what we are seeing. If I feel anxious and afraid whilst viewing the image, you can bet that the man is up to no good. If I feel comfortable or satisfied that the man's intentions are honourable, then it is a different story. It's a simple example, but effective, I believe. We might need to write down what we are seeing in case we receive any other pertinent information, or if the information is for another person, simply explain what we are seeing and leave it with them. Even with the best will in the world and years of experience under our belt, we can still misinterpret. We are, after all, human souls doing our best to understand, develop and utilise our intuitive and psychic ability. As I said earlier, intuition can be a cruel mistress. Going back to psychic detectives, any success gained usually comes about as a result of collaboration. An individual who sets out to engage their psychic ability in the quest to solve a mystery or find a missing person is likely to experience highs and lows and bouts of frustration. They might gather together a collection of jigsaw pieces, images, feelings, words and scenes, but not enough to tell the whole story or to be able to single-handedly solve the mystery. However, if all of the information they have is added to what the police have uncovered, the jigsaw pieces can fall swiftly into place. Science and metaphysics working together can be a powerful combination. A psychic might not be able to interpret that which they are feeling and seeing because there is missing data. I am aware that some psychics have periodically claimed to have solved major crimes single-handedly, and they might be telling the truth. But more often than not, even the most experienced psychic will wish with all of their heart that they could see more and be able to interpret it effectively. Humility is a highly desirable quality, sadly not one that is always present within the psychic and spiritual arena. And now I'd like to mention signs briefly. My daughter-in-law recently asked for a sign from her deceased grandmother, and received one, I believe. She'd been thinking about her grandmother, having just passed the cemetery in which was laid to rest, and she said, "If you can hear me, please send me a sign," whilst doubting that she would be able to. Now, this lady had never been at all comfortable with technology and rarely used social media such as Facebook. However, she had occasionally sent the odd brief message, usually on a relative's profile page. That very evening, the memories that Facebook periodically shows us presented one of my daughter-in-laws, and an old message from her grandmother that simply said, "Hi," popped up. Now, I'm not one for viewing every little thing that happens as a message from them, but even I felt sure that that was definitely the acknowledgement she'd asked for. I know how many of us are desperate to receive evidential signs from deceased loved ones and envy others who are lucky enough to experience them. However, these signs are sporadic and can show up at the most unexpected moments. My daughter-in-law is a little sceptical of such things, but open to possibilities, which is probably a sensible approach. And there are other signs that have nothing to do with lost loved ones, and these can be very interesting. Only a week ago, whilst out and about, I closed my eyes and asked for a sign that I was on a good track with my work-related plans. Who was I asking? God? A guiding energy? My higher self? I can't say for absolute sure and don't feel that it really matters. I said, "Can you please show me something today that I wouldn't expect to see?" And after a minute or two, the image of an arrow appeared on the screen of my mind, followed by one of an old pair of boots with the laces undone. Okay, interesting, let's go with that. Though where I'm likely to see some old boots today is beyond me. A minute or two later, I glanced over my partner's shoulder on our motorcycle trike and immediately saw a large white arrow painted in the middle of the road. 2 hours later, I saw the boots on the stall of a friend who makes and sells mugs at a family fun day. He decided to stick them on the end of the table just to see if anyone was interested in them. The arrow was maybe not the most convincing of signs, though I hadn't seen one for some miles and wasn't thinking about them at the time. The boots, however, were a complete surprise. The important thing with signs is to acknowledge them. Anything else would be quite rude, I think. And the more that we recognise and acknowledge, the more we will become aware of them in the future. Whoever it is who provides my signs and who communicates with me appears to have a sense of humour, something I have noticed many times throughout the years. And the interesting thing is, these are situations that are not run of the mill. They are things that are coming up that we have no prior knowledge of. I did once ask for a sign, and I actually chose a bell, in whatever form it might come. Later that day, I parked on a street, intending to visit a shop, only to realise that I was directly opposite a cafe called The Bell. Now, none of this is life-changing stuff, but I believe that it is evidence of our intuitive connection to a non-physical source of intelligence. Skeptics would call it coincidence, and maybe some signs are just that. However, whilst I believe that a certain amount of skepticism is healthy and helpful and keeps us from being too airy-fairy and silly, automatic, immediate skepticism is ignorant and arrogant and not at all proof of superior intellect. I'm going to close this module by encouraging you to ask for signs in your quest to develop your intuitive and psychic ability. It won't always appear to be forthcoming, or you yourself might not always recognise it, but it is still worth doing. Signs can come in other ways too. For example, whenever I have reached a point at which I have become disheartened and weary of psychic work, I receive an email or social media message telling me how much I have helped the sender to feel stronger or to get their life together. And it reminds me of why I continue. It is still my choice, but the timely communications really help. Also, be aware of energetic synchronicity, such as being in the right place at the right time, or chewing over an idea and then suddenly experiencing something that is very much connected to it. And here's another little example. Only yesterday, I was feeling bad because I hadn't seen my son and his family for a week and was quickly dashing around a supermarket, only to hear a loud, excited voice shouting, "Grandma Leanne," and turned to see my young grandson hurling himself along the aisle to fling his arms around me, closely followed by the sound of my toddler grandson yelling, "Gamma, Gamma." My daughter-in-law had spontaneously decided to pop out with the children to pick up a few things as my son was working from home. It was the best greeting I have ever received in my life, and, I like to believe, not just a hug from two beloved little boys, but from something greater than ourselves too. Anyway, thank you so much for investing in these modules. I really hope that they have been helpful to you in your exploration of your intuitive and psychic abilities.